What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today we have the review of Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. Now, just to be clear about what is and is not going to be in this video, I'm not going to be doing a full how to run for the Shadow of the Dragon Queen. I'm just going to be giving you all my overview, review, high level, what's in the book, what I like, what I don't like, what this book is, because I feel like the marketing made it kind of unclear, / the fan response made it kind of unclear. And then I will do a video later on with more of a deep in the weeds, breaking down the adventure that's included in this book. But this is just to let you all know, should you get it? Because when this video is dropping is when it drops on D&D Beyond if you order the Deluxe edition, which you can see the box over my shoulder. Wizards of the Coast was nice enough to send me the Deluxe edition so I can review every iteration of this book down to the aesthetics of the cover. So here we have the standard, the regular one, which is good. It's got Lord Soth there, got a dragon, got a person riding a dragon. So that's what you get with the standard cover. With the collector's edition, you get the spooky Lord Soth cover, kind of a shiny matte-ish finish. With a blank back cover. Very pretty. Really like this cover. It's a little bit different than the other ones they've been doing, but I think it's very evocative of the setting and the tone of Dragonlance in general. And then the Deluxe edition cover. It's shiny, as you can see as I move it around, and it's slightly different design. You got Lord Soth on a dragon, and you got your heroes over here, and the army of the Dragon Queen down here. And you have got just kind of your standard on the back cover kind of breakdown, but this is what you get in the Deluxe edition. Very pretty. Really like this cover. Probably the collector's edition is my favorite, followed by this, and then the standard one is in last place. Not to say that it's bad, just this is pretty. Additionally, if you get the Deluxe edition, you get a DM screen that the design on it isn't as dynamic, I would say, as some of the ones in the past. The color spectrum is pretty limited to your reds, your oranges, your yellows, your blacks, matte finish. And on the inside, this is something that I understand the impulse, but I don't agree with it. So over here, you have kind of your standard, here are the rules for concentration, cover, encounter distance, audible distance, like stuff that might be used in the game. And then all of your conditions over here, which I'm a fan of. This is like must have for a DM screen because amount of times I spend looking up conditions. Boof. But then you get to the other half. You have really tiny, like setting a DC, tracking DCs, damage by levels, severity, etc., etc. But then you have like war zone encounters, northern wastes encounters, Kalamon encounters, dragon army supplies and prisoners, which, you know, and then visuals for all of the Draconians. I mean, this is neat if you're running a Dragonlance game, but I would rather just have more general stuff that I'm going to need all the time when I'm DMing, as opposed to random encounter tables. They did this for the Spelljammer. They do this for all of the DM screens when they come out with like a specific one. My favorite one that they've come out with is the one when they initially came out with the Monsters of the Multiverse that was bundled with Xanathars and Tashas, the reprints of those. There was a DM screen in that. That's the one I still use. It's perfect. It's got everything that I need in a general sense with none of this hyper specific stuff that I personally don't like. In terms of the art on the DM screen, it's good. The art is well done. It's just not to my taste. If you're running a really dark, bleak Dragonlance game, then sure, this is exactly what you're looking for. But for me and my sensibilities, it's fine, but it's not my taste. Not to say it's bad, not my taste. And then Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn. It's a board game. A war game, board game that integrates with the adventure. And I'll get into how it integrates with the adventure later on in the review. But I've not gotten a chance to get this on the table yet. Just got it. Haven't gotten a chance to put a game together. It's the week of Thanksgiving as this video is being recorded, so it'll probably be a minute before I have a chance to run this. But would you all be interested in seeing me like do a review of this, get this on the table with some people, actually run through some scenarios and let you all know what I think? You get kind of an idea of what the gameplay looks like on the back of the box. But yeah, this is what you get in the deluxe edition: the DM screen, Warriors of Krynn, and the shiny version of the book. So overall, I'll get into it. We'll get there when we get there. Chapter 1. Actually, before we get to Chapter 1, War Comes to Krynn, which is an introduction. Here's the deal, gang. A lot of people, I think, are going to be mad about this book, because if I go to show you how much of this book is dedicated to setting, like the Dragonlance setting itself, divorced from the adventure, divorced from character options, just setting, that's what you're getting. War Comes to Krynn. It is 19 pages, technically 15 pages, because you got like the initial pages before the text actually gets going. Do I think that's a bad thing? Me personally, no. Because I'm not super married to the Dragonlance setting, and having read through this gives me everything I need to run the adventure Shadow of the Dragon Queen, which was their goal, to enable a DM and players to learn about the world enough to do the adventure. And they did that. This is not a setting book. This is an adventure set in the world of Dragonlance. There is a bit more world building that takes place over the course of the adventure. You'll learn a bit more about the world. But in terms of just encyclopedic-esque presentation of knowledge about the world, you're getting 15 pages total in the book. Giving you that up front so you now know whether or not you want to buy this book. Now, if you're a diehard Dragonlance fan, and this is just me, like, once again, speaking to my sensibilities when it comes to when I go to buy a book, because I had this happen with the Eberron book. Granted, Eberron is a setting book, so there was a bit more. But, you know, when you look at 3.5, there were books upon books upon books of Eberron. There are novels. There's all this stuff related to the world of Eberron that I love, that I consume, that I've read so many times. I don't need that reprinted in a 5th edition book. Give me stat blocks for the things that I need. Give me character options for the things that the characters can do in Eberron that can't happen in vanilla 5th edition, aka Forgotten Realms. And then give me some compelling stories to do with it. And I think they did that in the Dragonlance book. They gave you everything you need to run the adventure well. It's a good primer for new people on the world of Dragonlance. It's enough. And honestly, I'm super interested after those 15 pages. I want to learn more. And you know what I can do? I can go check out all the Dragonlance novels. I can go check out the other source books that are out there to get that more encyclopedic presentation of the world so I can dive deeper. Because this adventure in here only goes to 10th level. You do not fight Takesis. I'm going to continue to mispronounce things. If you haven't seen my previous Dragonlance coverage, don't know. All these words exist on a page to me. I've never heard anybody else say them. So just deal with it. Just deal with it. So you don't confront Takesis. You don't confront Lord Soth, really. Not in a direct battle. You gain a big victory in the war against the Dragon Queen, but you do not win the war against the Dragon Queen. And this adventure very much leaves off on a note of adventures to come, or the adventures can retire. It also gives you that option of like, hey, we did this big thing and now we're going to go live our lives because we've made this city safe. So you have those options. But I just wanted to get that disclaimer. The War Comes to Krynn section, which is your setting section, is relatively short in the larger scope of the book. Now, when it comes to character creation options, we're getting 14 pages of character creation options, not including, there's like gear in the first appendix at the end of the book, and sidekicks, which also is kind of player related. They don't fully reprint the sidekick rules. We'll get there. I keep trying to skip ahead. Character creation. So character creation options that you get in this book. If you haven't already checked it out, just check out their the Lunar Sorcery video I already did, just breaking down the new sorcerer subclass that we got. That's the only new subclass that you get in the book. You also get the, you get kind of a setting specific breakdown for various races like the dwarves, the elves, gnomes, etc., humans. Once again, there's like 7 different types of humans in this setting and like 2 elves, not including the sea elves I'm talking about specifically as it relates to, yeah. And you get the Kinder race option. They scaled a bit back from the Unearthed Arcana. The Kinder seem like a fun race to play. Their controversy has been stripped away. They're no longer, you no longer need to worry about them stealing from fellow party members, I guess, in the way that they are written. They're just a little mischievous, but they're fine. They're slightly different than gnomes and halflings. You get the fearless trait where you have advantage on saving throws to end the avoid or end the frightened condition, and once per long rest, if you fail on a saving throw to avoid or end the frightened condition, you can just choose to succeed. You just be like, nah, I'm good. I'm not going to be scared of you, which is huge in a dragon heavy game because frightful presence is a thing, and dragons do feature in this. So playing a Kinder is smart because once per long rest, which probably aren't going to be encountering that many dragons multiple times per long rest, you're able to just ignore the frightening presence thing. Now, additionally, you do get kind of the lore of the organizations, the Knights of Solamnia and the Mages of the High Tower. Is that right? Did I say that right? Let me check in the book. Mages of High Sorcery. I was close. It's confusing because most of them aren't sorcerers. They're wizards, but it's fine. Anyway, Mages of High Sorcery and Knights of Solamnia are featured more in the character creation section because it relates to organizations that your characters can join via feats and their backgrounds. I will say the lore on the Knights of Solamnia, super cool. Love that concept for an organization. Really want to run a campaign where the Knights of Solamnia like rise and are redeemed through their ability to adapt to a new threat coming in, because that's part of their inner conflict is, do we throw off our very convoluted and very messy standards of chivalry in order to meet a new world head on, or do we stick to these things and potentially let the world leave us behind? I think that's a very compelling story to tell, and I would love to run a campaign where just everybody is a member of an organization like that, and you have to make that call and you have to make those decisions. I think it's really cool. Love the Knights of Solamnia backstory. What I don't super care for, and I kind of talked about this in the preview material when they were talking about Dragonlance, and I did a video on it. So you can be a squire for the Knights of Solamnia via your background, or you can be an initiate of the High Sorcery, which that's fine if your background is that you're that thing. The problem that I have is that you gain station via feats that you can get at 4th level. And it's pretty devoid of a major story beat. There is a story beat in the adventure where you earn your robes, but it doesn't happen when the characters are 4th level. It happens well after the characters have become 4th level. So unless you as the DM are telling them, don't take this feat until this happens, then I don't understand why it's a 4th level feat, because this adventure, this book features bonus feats. So at 1st level, when you pick the squire or initiate backgrounds, you gain that relevant feat as it relates to the Knights of Solamnia or the Mages of High Tower. Or if you pick a different background, you get to pick between the skilled and tough. Yep, skilled and tough feats as a bonus feat at 1st level, regardless of race, regardless of class, etc., etc., etc. That's okay. That's fine. It's a very limited list. Obviously, you only get to pick from 2, which is good from a balancing standpoint. But then at 4th level, you get another bonus feat. And this is alert or divinely favored are 2 agnostic ones, or you can also pick mobile, sentinel, or warcaster for free. And then it's also all of the Knights of Solamnia and Mages of High Tower feats: the red robe, white robe, black robe, and then the crown, rose, and thorn knights. Even though at that point, there's no narrative justification for a player to have earned their robes or become a full-fledged member of the knights. Very little justification for them to become a knight of the crown. I think I'm remembering that right, because typically it's hierarchical. Like, you start off a knight of the sword, then a lot of people stay there because they like being a knight of the sword. But if you want to be a knight of the rose, you can graduate up to that. Generally speaking, obviously there are exceptions, but this is what's presented in the book as the norm. And then you're a knight of the rose for a while. And then if you want, you can get up to a knight of the crown. There's a progression. Whereas with the mechanics as they're presented here, you can just become a knight of the crown at 4th level without any super strong contact with a full-fledged knight. You meet one in the first chapter of the adventure, and she kind of dips out, and her squire steps up in a big way, but he's figuring it out just as much as you are. He's certainly not authorized to like grant you ranks, because he doesn't actually have ranks. That's part of his epilogue, is he goes off to actually like formally join the knights once this whole skirmish is over. So that, just because of the type of DM and player that I am, where I try to justify most mechanical choices through the narrative, stuff like this just annoys me. That's just my deal. If you disagree, if you think that's fine, then great, go nuts. It's all here for you. But if you're somebody that likes the narrative to drive the mechanics, then this leaves a little bit to be desired. I will say one thing I like about the Knights of Solamnia feats that you get to pick from, the rose, the crown, and the thorn, they're basically 4th edition warlord powers are what you get when you pick those feats, which is super cool. They should have just made a knight class that was basically the 4th edition warlord for this, like a knight, and say it's a Knight of Solamnia class. And as you level, you gain ranks. But then you still run into the problem that there's no other knights around. But if you start off as that class, then presumably you are a Knight of Solamnia, but you're only 1st level. So that also seems kind of wonky. It's imperfect, but I will say I do enjoy the fact that we're seeing some warlord-esque powers dropped into 5th edition, like the Knight of the Rose. Bolstering Rally is a bonus action. You can encourage one creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself. You can choose yourself. If the target can see or hear you, they gain temporary hit points equal to 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus plus the ability modifier of the ability score increased by this feat. You pick between Constitution, Wisdom, or Charisma. And you can use this bonus action number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. So that's super cool. And then you have Demoralizing Strike and Commanding Rally. And so, yeah, those of you familiar with 4th edition will know exactly what I mean when Warlord-esque powers. Those of you that are unfamiliar, it's a martial buffer, basically, which is a super cool class concept. And we need it in full force again. Maybe in one D&D, we'll get a proper Warlord. A lot of people say the Battlemaster subclass is that. It isn't. For those of us that play 4th edition, we know it's not. Anyway, I'm getting way off track. This is about Dragonlance, so let's get back to Dragonlance. Then the character creation chapter rounds out with the lunar sorcery. Just go watch the video I did on it. I get into it. It's cool. I like it. It'd make for a good, if you could figure out how to make it work, a good melee attacker / sorcerer multi-class option. But I get more into that in the video. So go watch the video and like the video and comment on that video after liking and commenting on this video. Speaking of liking and commenting, we are nearing 10,000 subscribers. And when we get that point, I'm going to buy whoever is, well, not whoever's a subscriber, because that implies I'm going to buy 10,000 people. I'm going to pick one subscriber and buy them a book of their choosing off the DM's Guild or D&D Beyond Marketplace. Just a book that you really want. Maybe this book, if you haven't had it by the point that we hit 10K. But in order to do that, you got to subscribe so that you can get a free book from me. Make me buy you a book. I want to buy you a book. I would love to buy you this book or another book. Just subscribe and then I'll buy you a book if I pick you in the random drawing. Okay, and then we get into the actual adventure proper, starting with chapter 2 of the book. So chapter 2 of the book is the first chapter of the adventure. So just subtract 1 from every chapter name, and that's the chapter of the adventure that you're in. Anyway, you get a really good running the adventure flow chart in the book, which I always appreciate when they do stuff like this. You get some more background on the threats that you'll be facing, some insight on Lord Soth and Consaldi, Fire Eyes, and the Draconians. You get a pronunciation guide that I have not looked at extensively because me mispronouncing Dragonlance things is just a thing now. And I'm going to keep rolling with it. I'm going to call Tachesis and Solamnia, even though people told me that that's not right. So, moving on. The first chapter 2 of the book is, I think it's called Prelude to War, which is very telling because, yeah, it's a prelude to the adventure. It's not actually part of the Shadow of the Dragon Queen adventure, I would say. There are 3 different scenarios presented that essentially get the characters to level 2 very easily. I'm just double checking in the adventure flowchart. Yeah, for first level characters, then we get chapter 3 for second to third level characters. So you basically have a adventure option for somebody that is a religious character, like cleric or paladin, or just somebody that is playing a character who's very religious. You have one for arcane characters, specifically ones that have interest in joining the mages of high sorcery, even though they're probably not a sorcerer because most of them aren't sorcerers, but they can be sorcerers if they are a sorcerer. And then the last one is just a catch-all. If you're not either of the other things, then you can do this one that's just a combat encounter, which is fine. So I will say I like this in concept, and they are really short. So it's tricky because oftentimes I will run sessions where half the session or a third of the session is one player doing something, and the rest of the players sit and watch, and they're entertained by it. They enjoy getting to sit back and just watch a conversation or a little mini adventure happen where me and another player are one-on-one, or maybe 2 players and myself do a little side thing. That's fine. But this is your session 1 stuff. This is how you're kicking it off. And so creating kind of a fractured starting point, I think, could be a problem at a lot of tables. I feel like a lot of people will be jazzed to get started on a Dragonlance campaign and then to be told, okay, hold on for an hour while we do this and then we'll get to you. Might be tricky for some groups. Now, if it's an established group that's played together a long time, probably going to have less of an issue with buy-in. But if it's a brand new group, you may want to read through the 3 different Preludes to War options and pick one for the players to participate in together as a unified group. And in fact, you could do that as some of your session 0 stuff of, hey, part of the prelude to this adventure deals with divinity. Let's say you want to do the gods one, like the gods reawakening. So as part of your character, pick one of the gods. They list all the gods in the first chapter, not first chapter, the prologue to the book, because the first chapter is character creation. So the War Comes to Kryn section, which is 15 pages that are not in a chapter, which that's annoying from a formatting standpoint. Anyway, in that section, they have all the gods listed, a little rundown of each god, who they are, what domains they cover. So you could just tell your players, pick one, have your character be religious, please and thank you, because that plays into the game that I'm running. And then you can run them all through the Broken Silence prelude. Or if you just want to let them do whatever, you could do the Scales of War and just have them go through a little combat adventure against some mysterious figures on the road. The only thing I will say, if you have somebody interested in joining the Mages of High Sorcery, make sure that you read the Eyes in the Sky section and have that be part of their backstory. Have that be something that happened to them prior to joining up with the rest of the group, and they have the scroll that they were given at the end of this prelude. That's one thing I will say. If you don't have a group that you think will accommodate like one-on-one play while they sit around and not engage with the game, well, you can engage with the game. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Then When Home Burns is the 3rd chapter of the book, 2nd chapter of the adventure. And this is kind of the starting point, what kicks off the adventure. Everybody's coming together for a funeral of a mutual friend. That's part of the session 0 stuff, is figuring out how did you know this person that there's a funeral for. Then there's a whole big festival. and the festival goes awry, and there's some treachery and traitors, and then, I don't know, the town's on fire and they have to run away. See the art? They're in a boat and they're running away. So the biggest thing I will say about the starting point of the adventure, it starts slow. It is very roleplay heavy. It is very slice of life, establishing what a happy town this is before things get bad, which I think is why the Scales of War prelude is a good one, having that combat in there, just so it doesn't feel super slow starting off. That's the one warning I'll give to DMs, is if you have players that are only really interested in the combat and the tactical side, they might be pretty bored for the first half session, third of a session of the actual adventure starting off, because it does start off pretty slow. Or you can tweak that as a DM and throw in some additional combat encounters or just something to keep those players engaged, because that's what DMs do. Shadow of War, the next chapter, this is when the players like go with the refugees of the town to the bigger city to ask for help. They deal with some politics and stuff. I will say, and then they're given some jobs and things like that before they are like made members, honorary members of the army, and they actually break out into the wide world to go like stop the threat. This adventure does a very good job, I will say, of evoking a wartime adventure feel, I guess is the easiest way to put it. Like reading through it, it a lot of times doesn't feel like your kind of standard D&D adventure of go here, do this, go here, do this, go here, do this. There is a good sense of desperation written into this adventure. There's a good sense of urgency of, hey, we need you to go do this because of this reason. Like in this chapter, the players have to go find a gnome tinkerer, and it's a very fun kind of wacky adventure. But the reason is the enemy in the previous chapter at the very tail end showed up with this horrifying machine of war, and the council of the big town is just like, hey, we need you to go find this gnome because we're pretty sure that she built this, and we need to figure out why she's working for the Dragon Queen army. And they're terrified and they're scared and they need you to go help them. So it does a good job of pushing that tone throughout the whole adventure, in my opinion. Another thing this adventure does really well, as I was reading it, I was just kind of like, are you kidding? So in the early parts of the second chapter of the adventure, chapter 3 of the book, you meet the city council, and you have a few scenes with the city council, and they're bickering and them like distrusting you. And there's somebody from your town that's clearly ambitious and power hungry who's kind of undercutting what you're saying and trying to elevate himself. And so there's some decent politicking role playing that you can do, and you can expand that out if your players are really intrigued in that type of gameplay. And then towards the end of the second chapter of the adventure, the whole city council gets murdered. Like all of them. The only people that survive are the head of the army, the governor, and the guy from the town who's kind of a dillweed to you. All the other members of the city council are dead, and you walk in and just see a dude sitting there like, and they've been stabbed. In fact, no, the governor's dead. The governor's dead because you walk in and the governor's in their seat with the longsword stabbed through their chest, pinning them to the chair. So yeah, the governor's super dead. So yeah, that was shocking to me as I was reading. I was like, oh, okay, what? They all died? It seemed like we were going somewhere with this whole city council thing. Nope. So I will say, that was, I imagine it would be very effective for a player at a table if me just reading it was affected by it. So I will say, well done from a writing standpoint there. And then you go down to the catacombs underneath the city, and you have your first kind of, I don't want to say interaction. You are aware of Lord Soth for the first time. And then the adventure kind of kicks off. So those of you that didn't play early BioWare games may not fully know what I'm talking about, but like, early-ish BioWare, I'm talking like Knights of the Old Republic, and then going into the first Mass Effect, there was this template that they followed where it was, you know, initial adventure, like hero's journey, like going through the threshold, all this stuff, and you hit a point where you were brought into an organization like the Jedi or the Spectres, and then it would splinter off and be like, okay, go out into the wider world, go do these potential things in whatever order you want to. And then everything will coalesce back into the climax of the adventure at the end. I didn't mind it. I enjoy that style of storytelling. And guess what? They did it again. Well, this isn't Bioware, but once you hit the third chapter of the fourth chapter of the adventure, third chapter of the book, Northern Wastes, you go out into the wider world. The Northern Wastes, this is the map. It's a very big area. And you got some lettered labels all over the place showing where things are, but it's a hex map. And you are provided with some guidance. You start off at point A, and you're kind of told, like, you can go these directions, but the players can go explore. Like, you're looking for something. You're hunting something down. And so you get kind of a sandbox with optional rails, if that makes sense. It's like a path. It's like a hiking path where you can go off the trail. You can go explore and do whatever you want. You'll probably get lost, but if you know how to navigate things well, you might come across something interesting. And you're presented with three, once you hit point B, essentially, like you hit point A, you meet somebody that take you to point B, and then it's like, okay, go deal with C, D, and E, and then we'll talk again. And C leads to G. And so it's very well done, in my opinion. I enjoyed the structure of this section. I feel like it offers a lot of freedom to the players. There's a lot of neat things that you can do. And as a DM, I can add stuff to this map. If there's little like personal side quests that like the characters have written into their backstory, I can include stuff here. And they've given me the freedom to do that as a dungeon master, which is important. And I like that. Okay, and then once you're done exploring, you start chapter 6 of the book, City of Lost Names, where you found the City of Lost Names, which is kind of what you were looking for. And as you start exploring the city, you run into Demolin, once again, probably not pronouncing it right, who's a very old elf, survived the cataclysm. And this is the elf that allows you to go through the test of high sorcery. So actually get your robes as a magic user, become a full magic user in the context of Dragonlance. Because it's kind of it's too dangerous for you to continue doing what you're doing without more support. So if you're willing, let's go ahead and do the test. You can earn your robes, and then we can move on. Now, here's the thing. Chapter 6 of this adventure is when the players should be 8th to 9th level. So, and this is really early on in chapter 6. So if you wanted to have them take that feat at 8th level, when they've actually completed it, that makes more sense to me. But at this point, they will have actually been operating as a full magic user, like robed magic user, for 4 levels at this point. And that just, it's kind of a letdown. It's kind of disappointing. I know I'm probably overthinking it a bit, but that's just my opinion, I suppose. And the other thing that kind of annoys me is the fact that, like, once they've concluded the test, you don't really get anything. Like, she talks about it's too dangerous for you to continue on, but there's no mechanical benefit to completing the test other than you're not dead. That's good. So obviously the feats are the mechanical benefit of becoming a robed member of one of these orders. But if you've already had that for 4 levels, then what's the point? So yeah, I mean, these are leveled feats, but they're 4th level feats. And there's no note that I saw anyway, I might have missed it, that says if you're running Shadow of the Dragon Queen, then don't let your player take the feat until they pass the test. So that's something that just narratively doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And if you're not going to force them to wait on the feat, then have some actual benefit to passing this test. Give them a boon of some kind, or have some kind of detriment to them by not having undergone the test. I mean, there just needs to be something, in my opinion, to justify this whole, like, well, you can't continue on. Because as a player, if it's like, oh, I'm undergoing this test, I'm going to get something cool, and they just hand me a set of robes, and they're like, okay. And the DM's like, yeah, I mean, you don't get any extra power or anything. It's like, cool. Okay, I guess I'll continue on. City of Lost Names is a cool kind of open mini sandbox section of the adventure where you're just trying to get to the center of the city, essentially, to the tower. And then it's the final chapter where a flying citadel is headed towards the city and it's your job to stop it. You have to get up there. It's really well paced, really well done. I feel like it kind of coalesces into this more linear kind of climax of the adventure. You run into some vampires, some ghosts that you can ally yourself with. You have people that are betraying the dragon army and be like, hey, if we work together so I can increase my station within the dragon army, I'll help you take out this person that's above me. And the players can make that decision, which is really fun. Kind of the moral grayness that comes with desperation in war. The way that you deal with Lord Soth is really fun. The only thing that I will say from a criticism standpoint about how they do Lord Soth, and then you hit the end of the adventure once you're dealing with Lord Soth, you have a stat block for him. Granted, CR 19 is Lord Soth. I get the impulse to have a stat block for him. See, it's a big old stat block. But as soon as you put stats to him, he can be killed. It's unlikely that level 9 or 10 adventurers will be able to take him out. But in a 1 versus 4, 1 versus 5 fight, it becomes increasingly more likely. And if you have your players kill Lord Soth, then all of a sudden this menacing otherworldly nature kind of evaporates. He has 228 hit points, which is a lot. He has legendary resistance. He has magic resistance. And I would rather, when you're talking about villains like Lord Soth is presented in this book, where he is a force of nature. If you see him, your only option is to run. Then at that point, you don't stat him out like a villain. You stat him out like a volcano. Where, yeah, a player can run up with their sword and hit a volcano. Does it do anything to the volcano? No. Does it damage the volcano? No. Can you kill the volcano? No. But if you continue to stand there and whack the volcano, guess what? The lava is going to continue to run over your feet, dealing consistent and devastating damage round after round after round. Now, a lot of the more tactical and, really crunchy players out there might not like that because Lord Soth is a villain. He should be able to be killed and it seems unfair. But once again, how would you as a DM stat a volcano? How would you stat a hurricane? The players can't kill those things. They can't do anything about those things other than try to mitigate the damage as much as possible and get to safety. And so that's how I wish Lord Soth would have been presented in this adventure. Is sure, if you want to have a stat block for him for the down the road adventures, throw that in the book. Totally get that. But in the section where the players come face to face with him, note, do not use the stat block for Lord Soth. Here's how you run Lord Soth against a level 9, level 10 party. And I think that's cooler. I think that's more interesting. It's the end of Rogue One when Darth Vader is coming down the hallway. He didn't have hit points. He didn't have an AC against those soldiers firing weapons at him. It was irrelevant that they were there. And I feel like if you want to present a truly otherworldly power, now granted, he's not the final boss. Takesis is the final boss. But he is Darth Vader. He is the Darth Vader to the Emperor. Kind of. I mean, once again, Dragonlance hardcore lore nerds, don't come after me. I think you understand the metaphor I'm going for. And so I think it would have been interesting for him to be presented in that way, as opposed to actually giving him stats. That's just me. Then the adventure ends. Players are given the option to continue or retire. And then at that point, it's up to the DM to write the rest of the adventure using the information provided to them in the book or additional Dragonlance materials. The appendices. You have gear and magic items is Appendice A. Nothing truly crazy here. The Hoopak is a two-handed melee / ranged weapon that has caused quite the scuttlebutt with the polearm mastery feat and stuff like that. So, I mean, look for other videos on this site for your Hoopak content because I haven't gone down the rabbit hole yet, but it's very funny to me. And, you know, the gnome siege weapons, the boiler drake is interesting. The gnome flinger is a lot of fun, where it's a catapult made for people. The Dragonlance, it's okay. It's a +3 magic weapon, and if you hit a dragon with it, it takes 3d6 force damage. And any dragon of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you can immediately use its reaction to make a melee attack. So if you're mounted on a dragon, that's pretty neat. I don't know. It's just, it seems kind of mundane, if that seems fair. I don't know. I just expected something like Buck Wild, since it's the namesake of the setting. Whereas just some additional damage on a +3 magic weapon and granting a additional attack to a dragon only within 30 feet seems fine. It's fine. Anyway, and the Mirror Reflected Past is an interesting magic item, although it's more of a plot device in this particular adventure, but be sure to check that out. Friends and Foes, Death Dragons, super cool, super scary. The art is great. Draconians are a fun new villain type that I think can slot into a lot of different settings and be a lot of fun to run. Their death throws ability is really cool, where when the Draconians reduces your hit points, its magical essence lashes out of the ball of lightning to the closest creature within 30 feet of it before arcing out to 2 other creatures within 15 feet of it. They all have to make dex saving throws or take damage, which is really cool. And they all have different death throws. So that was the Auroch Draconian, but it's different damage types of like acid or fire or force, things like that. So super cool. Love that. Then you have your dragon army people, your bosses, your named people, kinder, fighters, all that kind of stuff, which is really fun. Really cool. Lord Soth is a devastating monster block for higher level adventurers to take him on. And then sidekicks. You have some sidekicks here presented to go along with the adventurers on their adventures. And then additionally, once again, they don't reprint the sidekick rules. They tell you, go check out Tasha's Cauldron of Everything if you want the full breakdown of the sidekick rules. And so you have these stat blocks, and then after the stat blocks are presented, you have the leveling tables. So once they level, this is what happens. So, you know, I'm not mad about it. I know some people are going to be annoyed that they didn't reprint the sidekick rules. They typically don't reprint stuff. So, yeah, that is the Dragonlance books. Let me know what you all thought down below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will be doing a further breakdown of the adventure, kind of getting into how to run it down the road. But be sure to let me know what else you want to hear in regards to Dragonlance, any other aspects of the book that you want me to cover. Be sure to let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.